Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Theory Forge Friday. Here we have a little bit of an odd sort of thing. Yeah, don't worry about the text at the top. It is definitely episode 41. We don't really have a title for this episode. Just some awesome people, and we're just gonna be chatting it up. Um, Sog, you're gonna be running this one, right?
Oh, I can. We,
Oh,
we've got we've got a lot of random stuff to talk about, but I'm happy to start with this. I'm gonna I'm gonna start off with just kind of what we've been talking about here. That we last week did not get to a topic that we'd been a little bit excited to talk about and kind of avoiding at the same time because it's it's not where we wanted to be right now, and it's not where we want to go. It's not how this show was designed, and but we gotta talk about it right now. I'll try to cut it somewhat short at the end, but Daybreak Games team moving on from Landmark development to focus on EverQuest next. I'm going to say moving on from Landmark development to yet again start working on EverQuest next. I think that's a better way of putting it.
Well, it's interesting because when I was in the forums this week, I was trying to use the term building EverQuest next because working on, I mean, they have kind of been working on that in some fashion since some of the systems are shared for Landmark. But people even had trouble tripping. How can you be testing? How can Landmark be a test bed for EverQuest Next if they aren't working on EverQuest Next? Like, well, they're kind of working on it, but they haven't been building it.
But they're not.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
working in the sense that some of the stuff they have shared systems, so some of the stuff that they're doing, they're working on EverQuest Next by building Landmark, and that's the only work that's been done is what they built with Landmark is what I tried to explain to them.
And the initial creation of Landmark was specifically work for EverQuest Next, putting a builder together for EverQuest Next environments. But this whole process got derailed about 1 year ago now. Maybe a little more than a year ago, where with the and there's more focus put on Landmark than we ever expected, which created all kinds of cool opportunities, right? So wait, Landmark could become, because at that point the door opened. The door opened for the potential for something beyond. This is a tool to make EverQuest Next, which is what we heard in December of 2013, and then as we got started at the beginning of 2014, we're going to test out these core systems that are going to go into building the world of EverQuest Next, and that was the whole point. But then somewhere in April or May, this idea that, and we knew Landmark would eventually be its own, it would be there forever. We knew that already. But the idea that it could expand and it could be something really awesome and really special with all of these cool features, I was excited about that. Wow. If this is truly the focus, there's potential to be better than EverQuest Next. But that dragged on and dragged on and dragged on and dragged on, and now we're a year after that, and they've still got to make EverQuest Next, and the additions and the changes and the extra effort that was put into Landmark hasn't paid off. Hasn't
you know,
hasn't drawn in more people.
and there's actually two parts to it that I want to bring up. One that is kind of relevant to me, and one that I'll then pass over to Diggs. And the one that's relevant to me is that I'm actually working on a creative voxel sandbox quasi MMO right now, and I've seen over the past 6 months firsthand how hard it is to do this stuff. It's just so ridiculous. It's because it's a new sort of development. It's not something we can, and this is an analogy I use all the time. We look at puzzle, match 3 games. We look at platformers, beat 'em ups, JRPGs. We have, decades of experience with those. We know how to make those. We know how to make them easily. There's tools to make them easily. There's tools to make a crappy platformer that's better than something we had 20 years ago, in 5 minutes. But we don't know about voxels. We especially don't know about voxels for games. This is brand new space. Actually doing all this stuff with voxels and real-time deformation, and having other game systems laid over top of it, this is going way above and beyond the stuff that Miguel was saying about when he was working for the Canadian government like 10, 15 years ago or whatever, that led to the development of Voxel Farm. This is still uncharted territory. So that's one of the kind of hurdles with something like this. Even if you have a solid plan in mind for how the game's going to work, actually developing the tech for it is just a phenomenal task. So, that's one half of it. Is it's impossible to have estimated the amount of time it takes to actually do something like this because it's uncharted territory. And the other thing is apparently Dave is notorious for scheduling, and that, Diggs, you have firsthand experience with.
Right, yeah. Well, and the way I say it is that, it's typical of him to believe his own hype for the schedule. And, he's sure that we can get things done in this amount of time, but, it's usually, it's not unusual for the schedule to slip a year and a half. And the whole time him be telling you every month it's going to ship this month. It has to ship. And the real story that I tell is one game I worked with him on was supposed to release the end of November, and I realized it wasn't going to release. So I told him I was going home to DC for Thanksgiving vacation, take a week off. And he was like, "You can't, because the game has to ship at the end of November." Like, it's not possible. So I'm taking Thanksgiving off, and I'll be back in a week, and you'll have me I don't need Christmas, I don't need New Year's, but I need Thanksgiving, so I'm taking that off. And I had talked to all the programmers and the designers, and they were like, "It's impossible." I talked to QA, and they said, "We will not sign off on it. There's no way it's going to be ready." And so I took my vacation, I came back, and the game released a year and a half later.
It was because you took that vacation, Diggs.
Exactly. I delayed it a whole year and a half. But hey, my localizations were up to date. They were ready to go. Yeah, I mean, as soon as you start looking at the schedule, I mean, there were some flags, but we don't know what assets they actually have. So what I've been explaining on the forums is that, we got that announcement in November through the Forbes article that combat was always supposed to be in the game. They hadn't announced it yet, but because they weren't sure they could get it in before launch, but now they thought they could get it in shortly after launch. And then when the roadmap came out that February, PvE was in for launch, and it's like, you didn't even have a design for combat in November. How are you going to have that in by winter 2014? So you're kind of saying that you're not releasing winter of 2014. And then once we found out that the pathing is all messed up, we found that out in August, and you could see the delays for that, getting PvE combat in and everything. I mean, we got PvP combat with only 3 weapons. Like, the writing was on the wall.
That was that horrible bunny hopping PvP too.
It is about damn time, is all I can say. And for anyone who didn't see this coming, that's shame on you, your own fault. I mean, you could even see it. I know the team got smaller, but look at how far out your patches for Landmark were getting and how little was being done. Yeah, I doubt they just switched. I bet they switched, what, a couple months ago probably. They started at least a little bit of focus onto Next. And now probably major focus, obviously. But it's a cool idea. I mean, I still think Landmark's a neat idea. I just don't think it would ever. I don't see the potential. I've always said that. I don't see how you have enough players to create what they wanted to create, and to think it's anything but monetary reasons. I mean, most games are obviously, but this whole idea, well, we can create some money. We can make some money flow while we're developing the tools, and it just didn't work. But not for what
that part worked.
It worked for the beginning.
And it could have worked better if they didn't get a little bit carried away with making it better. They didn't have to care about I know there's no cylinder tool. I know that it still feels like there's a barrier to entry for learning to become a builder in Landmark, but the quality of the building of what you can make in Landmark is pretty awesome now. It's better than I expected EverQuest Next to look. Knowing I was expecting not that crisp, not that clean. I was accepting the potential for not as good of a graphic environment as could have been there with a different system. But right now, I mean, it's an awesome building environment. It really is.
But that's what they said they were going to release. This was on EQ Nexus in their info section of detailing what they had talked about at SOE Live 2013. It said in there would be no flora, no fauna at launch, and if there's no fauna, that probably means there's no combat.
So to clarify, it's a cool builder, but again, I think it's overarching to think that you are going to have enough people that are so talented to develop worlds of AI, of story, in any meaningful pace.
Well, I can understand that there might have been some delays with it too. That they might have been relying on this golden ticket that we're going to learn so much from the Storybricks team, and that's really going to launch our AI forward. And we're going to learn so much from Voxel Farm and be able to apply so much of it to the engine. When in reality, after they started implementing stuff and saying, well, crap, we need to actually build some of our own solutions because some of the stuff they're giving us doesn't work, or they might be doing things in a way that's awesome, but isn't really for the scope and scale of this project. That a lot of time was spent just waiting for the solution to either prove itself or not, and the proof was indeed not in the pudding on a bunch of different things. So, and that was in a lot of different things too. Like, it's unfortunate, and I think that their hand was kind of forced by a large and loud part of the community that put combat in, put PvP in.
No, that wasn't. But at what point do you think that started happening?
I feel like it was around SOE Live and shortly after when they started really hounding for PvE, and unfortunately that the designers were forced to make a poor decision, or to
add it in, right?
To add it in while it was too early, untested, right, before the servers could even keep up with all that action, before the action was without actually testing. And then when the bunny hopping stuff came, it's like, well, hell, that just throws everything that we did out the window.
Well, if you look at what they said was going to be in the game at launch during SOE Live 2013, all that stuff is there. Plus, we have a little bit of combat. So everything is in, and a little bit more that they were hoping to have in originally for their launch. Plus, it's been an extra year, which is why they can't take any more time to try and fix the little piddly stuff, even the stuff that, we would love for them to tweak. I mean, I would love for them to add a couple of weapons. And the big thing for me, I don't even need AI tools. I just think it would be cool to be able to place the 5 mobs that we have on claims. That would get us able to tell some stories right there. Have people come on and do some combat. And actually, I think we could start. I mean, the claims are fairly big. We could start placing mobs on the surface on claims too.
I have a question.
But
From the folks here that have developed, and I have not. The other thing I keep saying as well as they're creating next, they're going to constantly be porting this into Landmark. They're going to give us the AI tools. Isn't it one thing to develop an AI system that developers are using to create a world versus turning that into a packaged way that you can make a UI that is user-friendly to the average player? That's like a lot more work, right? So these people that are thinking just because they create a UI system that they are using in a programming environment, they'll automatically port that over to Landmark. Well, that's not that simple, right?
Yeah,
So
I would imagine a lot of what they're doing is using an external tool. They'll maybe select the thing in an editor and start applying properties, and then they'll save it off like that. But to actually make all of those properties modular rather than baking them in before you put the build out, that's the part that gets really difficult. Wrapping a UI around that probably isn't that difficult if it's stuff that's knowable and understandable, and it's not too complex. You don't have to do like too much programming sort of stuff. But for the most part, it's something that they're probably doing more in editor and then releasing it that way rather than doing live in an actual live environment, like clicking on a character, walking around, and then changing its stuff on the fly. Because I'm sure a lot of that stuff is baked in, and a lot of that stuff is still is baked in because it's spaghetti and it needs to be unwound and cleaned up. So it'll be nice when they can do it in real time. Then maybe we'll be able to see about doing it in real time. But I doubt they're actually doing it in real time.
well,
we had no reason to expect, even in Landmark at any time, to have such a game-like UI that we even ended up with for the building. That in the initial talks, it felt more tool-like. I expected to have for this actually the development toolkit going in, maybe not the same one, but more on that line. Like when we saw the first demos of Landmark where they had the slope tool and stuff like that it looked more like a normal 3D editor, the way that he was doing the stuff. I mean, he was hotkey. There was no bar or anything in his first videos. But then it became how do we create a user experience that makes building feel like a
the
game,
characters doing it.
and like the characters doing it instead of just being a builder. So that extra level of making it look like the character is doing it, putting all of that in. Now, that's more work. That's the difference. And they will have people on the development team who are helping to program in the story part of the world, and they'll be using an internal development system. They'll have their own UI for that. They're not going to be opening up the source code and typing in but potential things that one mob might say, although it could be in a localization text file of some kind.
The beauty of the way Storybricks was set up is that it was it's that brick-like feature, like why can't I think of the name of it? I mean,
well, this is assuming that Storybricks is actually set up and it's not all spaghetti and.
No. I'm talking about actual Storybricks, just the
Storybricks company stuff, yeah.
The demo stuff that we could look up on YouTube, where you can see the bricks and how you can move them in and out. It's based on Scratch. It looks like it's the Scratch programming language, or Code Spells uses something similar where you can just move things in and out. I mean, maybe they could do something. Maybe they could look at Code Spells and see what that interface looks like. But yeah, the issue is that people aren't realizing, as you mentioned, Phantom, is first the developers have to get the tools working for themselves, and that's one thing. Then they have to translate it into an interface for the players, and that is going to take some amount more time for them to do. It's not going to be, oh, look what we can do now. Now the players have it. Poof. Yeah.
The other thing that stuck out to me from Terry's letter that no one really mentioned was he basically said, well, now we got to see if we can actually do what we think we can do. Basically saying we don't have any of these real pillars yet. We're going to kind of do some testing and iteration. So for everyone that thinks Next has already been in the process of being built, he basically said, we don't have those things yet. We're going to work on them now.
Right. And so that was the whole thing, I think, that came up again a year ago when what we heard November of 2013 is that, yeah, we've done some research and we think that we can get combat in shortly after launch. And then August rolls around and it's like, well, we have these pathing problems with the mobs, so we're just going to do PvP. And then you start realizing, yeah, it's a voxel environment. It's not going to be as simple as having mobs running around on a mesh surface. They're actually going to have to calculate in where they go and what they do when voxels are missing or voxels are added. And that's more complicated. And that's going to take some research to figure out.
The other thing that I was, again, part of this, we talked about this beforehand, and Diggs has been on the forum more than us, trying to, hey, people, this is not like 50% done. That this is like, what, 10 at best, 5? I don't know. They have the building stuff. Built. Yeah. Yeah. And the one thing we always said was, look, everybody just wants a damn video. Show us some gameplay. And it was such an angry community that you have to think, if they had any type of gameplay, they would have shown you 10 seconds, 30 seconds, something.
Well, right.
They have not.
Right. And you look back, because I was trying to tell people that they mocked stuff up for EverQuest Next. Like, they worked on Landmark, and then SOE Live was coming up, and they're like, we have to put something together for SOE Live. There's no ogres running around as character models.
What?
There's not a whole suite of Karen running around as Karen models.
What? No way. I don't believe you. You're talking nonsense right now. No.
Why was Dark Elves the only thing that we saw?
Dark Elves in the stuff that was built by the players in the Dark Elf contest submission stuff.
And I feel like an idiot was sitting at SOE Live and seeing this demo of this Dark Elf walking up with a crown or whatever the hell it was that they had on their head, and everybody was bowing. Oh, that's so cool! Look at the AI; it's so amazing. Oh, now it's a demo. What the hell?
Oh, look at the machinima.
It was like watching a reenactment on like Dateline or something, where it was like, this is not actual footage, this is an artist's rendition of what could be happening potentially if we'd actually put that stuff into a game that we haven't really separated from Landmark now, because it's actually just one thing. And Dave said this numerous times when he was asked directly, like, well, when are you going to show us more about EverQuest Next? It's like, well, you're seeing what we're doing for EverQuest Next.
Right.
And now people are like, oh, they've been working on EverQuest Next simultaneously. Well, simultaneously is an interesting word because theoretically they've always been working on it. They just it's not.
Well, I mean,
for people who, I want to make something before we. To make sure everyone realizes we're not bashing on Next. I think all of us here really want to see Daybreak succeed. We want to see this game. So that's not what we're doing. I think what we're trying to do is just make people say, wake up. You need to lower your expectations. This game is literally years away.
Not necessarily lower your expectations so much as have a lot of patience, because they're going to need a lot of time to do what they're doing. Because, like I said, this is, uncharted territory, and plus it's with an engine that they're still developing. I mean, if we're going to go back to the subject we were just talking about, kind of jokingly, EverQuest Next and Landmark have been in development ever since PlanetSide 2 was in development, and even some of the tech that went into the ForgeLight engine came from DCUO, which was on Unreal 3. So, You know, how far do we want to chase the wagon? Free Realms as well. That was also kind of the precursor to the Forge Light engine. But no, in terms of like actual time being spent developing it, it's kind of a hard thing to really put a metric on because, you know, I'm sure there's tons of concept art. There's probably some music.
Well, yeah,
sound,
that's why I was.
you know, there's a lot of assets that exist.
Well, that's why I was trying to differentiate between working on and building, because there's lots of concept art, but there's not a lot of, you know, you can't go into the EverQuest Next world and see all this stuff happening. And the other thing in hindsight that was interesting was how Darren was the one that was like, these armor sets, these weapons that you see in EverQuest Next, you'll also be able to see them in Landmark. Yeah, because they're kind of built for Landmark, and there is no EverQuest Next to see them in. That's why the armor sets were from the EQNX stuff that we saw at SOE Live. That's what made it into Landmark initially. It was like, oh, why didn't they do that? High-tech brawler, and there was the Wasteland Ranger. We saw the concept art for those that never came in, but we saw armor sets from EQ Next make it into Landmark. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, and what I put this on Twitter because I kept saying, "Well, I'm so pissed because you're shutting down Landmark for a game I'll never play."
They aren't shutting down Landmark.
My reaction to that was, you know, join the crowd. I felt the exact same way about Landmark invading Next space.
Right.
Anyways, is there even more to say about this?
And so just to be clear, because some people seem to be super focused on the producer's letter, and there is also that interview with Druid's Fire Phoenix for, what does she do? MMO?
She had been with MMORPG.com. I don't know if she still does, but now she's writing for MMO Central with Izari and Airwolf and a couple other greater MMO community people. I like Izari a lot. He's good.
In that interview, Terry says that they're slowing down the updates to 2 to 6 weeks. So it's slowing down the updates. It's not shutting it down indefinitely. You know, we think it still depends on how quickly they can actually, you know, build stuff.
It might just be a matter of once we have a feature that's ready for EverQuest Next that we can push over to Landmark, we'll do it. But
that's
not,
the point.
You know, not making any promises or giving any schedule for that.
Right.
Which,
that's
you know,
the point.
At this point, this almost kind of reminds me of some of the discussions we've had in the past for other games in open development. The idea of just like almost going dark in some ways and just keeping very minimal about the news. And then when there's finally something to reveal, it's like, all right, everybody, you know, either shut your mouths if you've been complaining, or if you haven't been, then ready for your jaw to hit the floor. Here's the awesome stuff we've been working on. If they pull off something like that, that might be the thing that can really really bring the community back. But it's going to be a hard road to get there, because along the way, everybody's going to feel like they're getting more and more ignored. It's tough.
I mean, I don't think that. I think the overhype part to me is the combat. If they had just stuck with that original vision of the original features they wanted in for launch, we would be good. We're surpassed that. People wouldn't be expecting AI tools today in their hands today. They wouldn't be expecting, you know, PvE combat robustly today. And the team would have been able to move over to EverQuest Next almost a year ago rather than now. But that was going to happen anyway. We were always going to be at this point where we are right now. It just should have happened a year ago.
Okay, so a year ago, I'm going to get us a little bit off this topic and go into our other thing that we have to talk about.
Great idea.
It's a good way to bridge the gap. a year ago, EverQuest Next was at the very top of the MMORPG.com game rating / hype list, and was in that spot for, well, like until a couple months ago, as news started changing, less information started coming out. But we wanted to talk a little bit about this list, and I'll put a link for what we're talking about now. One of the things I want to put in is, put up front is, it's been a long time since this list, which isn't the best curated list, it doesn't really mean anything, but it's an interesting list, and it has a lot of games on there, and people do contribute to it. So it's been a long time since games that have existed for quite a while are the ones on the very top. So I've never played Guild Wars 2, but with the upcoming expansion and the changes they've made, people talk a hell of a lot about this game, and it's kind of this border. It's a theme park that kind of wants to be a sandbox experience, but it's heavily. Is it as heavily a PvP game as the original Guild Wars was?
Yeah, every time I come by and watch somebody who's watching or playing Guild Wars 2 on their stream, they're PvPing, they're fighting, they're attacking or defending something. So it's pretty PvP focused.
Is Guild Wars 2, even though I don't play it, is Guild Wars 2 worthy of a #1 top-rated MMO slot? And I want to know why anyone would think that, or a specific reason why people wouldn't.
I think it's at the top of the hype, right? Which might be a little bit different. And I definitely hear tons of people talking about it. Lots of people like to play it. It's very popular. Most people I see in the forums have played it. So hype-wise, I mean...
The nice thing about Guild Wars 2 is, even though they're cash shop, there have been problems with it here and there because of it breaking their economy a bit. It's a buy once, play forever title. And that in itself can make for a really high spot on this list. If it's
right, and let's look at what other stuff on the list. I see Guild Wars 2, I see the Secret World, I'm not maybe Final Fantasy. And then how much farther down do you have to get to?
Why are they 2? Okay. Why is Secret World 2? I'm sorry. But...
Okay, that's funny. I actually saw somebody posting pictures of that. And, what kind of fun? I think I actually have a buddy who works at FunCon, but I honestly don't know. I see them at every convention. I see the game. I talk to people about it, and it's like, there's just something about it that doesn't really draw me.
Have you played Secret World at all?
I have not played it yet.
I played.
People have been citing it as a great game. They like the quests. What's the name of the kind of cartoon tutorial on games that comes out on YouTube? You know what I'm talking about? They go to the chalkboard.
The extra credits thing?
Extra credits, yeah. They think Secret World is a great design for questing.
Yeah,
that people should follow that design for questing.
Secret World Quest is the only game I can think of right now where if you don't actively cheat, like, by cheating I mean looking up exactly what you're supposed to do, that there's this, it feels like you're playing a Resident Evil type game or something like where you have to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. You have these snippets of information you're gathering, and you're really learning about this interesting, kind of creepy world going on. I never got deep into the multiplayer part of it. I never did any of the dungeons and everything, but the world exploration and the quests and their class system is very well done, where you have basically two main classes, but it's based on a weapon that you use, and you can equip two weapons at one time. Some are magic and some are melee. My character was wielded a hammer and used chaos magic, and it led for some interesting combos that was kind of tanky and debuff oriented. But it's beautiful to see. The world is great. I know that quite a few people left the secret world about a year ago. There was some update that came in that changed the way that group gameplay worked. I don't understand exactly how that happened, but the people that were doing the high-end rating content, the ones that I know, got a little bit disillusioned.
Well,
you guys
so we got those
all?
two. I just wanted to mention. We got those two, and then I think we have to drop down fairly far on that list to get to NWO. What other games can we actually play right now?
Final Fantasy XIV is the best. This
Final Fantasy one has been released already?
Final Fantasy XIV is number 3 on this list. There's an expansion called Heavensward coming out. I posted the gameplay trailer in our chat earlier today, but I firmly believe that Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward will be the pinnacle of the theme park experience up until now. I really like what they did. There's so much to do in this world. The crafting's good. The class system is good. The leveling, once they got over the fate grinding stuff, was where all you did was literally grind to max level. But the quests are good. The world is fun to explore. You can get into your character. The main storyline and the CGI and the voice act, all of it is what you would expect from a Final Fantasy title. It was released in 2013. All of that is great. I played a lot right after Realm Reborn came out, because the game was originally released and pulled and came out as a Realm Reborn. I played quite a bit, but I ran out of content. But if I log in now, even though my character is max level, I have weeks and weeks of stuff that I could just be doing. There's chocobo racing now. It's what you want out of a Final Fantasy MMO, and from what I've seen with this expansion coming up, they're really even stepping up their game. They're adding in a flying mount element. I know the Evercast show doesn't like flying mounts.
Okay, there's a couple of things I want to say about flying mounts. So I saw, I'm sure Brass facilitated this because she, is smart about these things and jumps on things. When they were talking about getting rid of the flying mounts, she actually had Trove post something about dragon mounts, and they're going to start giving away dragon mounts. It's like, flying mounts? Hell, we're giving them away. Come win one. And, and then what you were just saying right there, I'm just thinking, so much combination of pressure and backlash on Blizzard to actually have the flying mounts in the game. And so they eventually back down, and after all, they are going to have flying mounts in the game. Kind of funny. This list is kind of funny to me too, because once you get past Elder Scrolls Online to Camelot Unchained, it stops being large multi-point drops, and it's pretty much a gradual descent from there. And when you look down the list, there's actually a lot of things that are still in the upper 7s that are pretty good games. A lot of people are playing a lot of Lord of the Rings Online. EVE Online, I'm surprised isn't higher. People are still hyped for that game. It's got a giant community, and they'll rip your head off. Landmark is still on the list there, and eventually it'll be free, but no idea when. So they might as well mark it $20. I don't know. Dust Hall, it's hyped, but they canceled or otherwise failed the Kickstarter recently. So while it's got a lot of hype behind it, it isn't a lot of hype with wallets to back it, I guess.
Entirely based on how they structured their campaign, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, we've talked about that a lot, and I definitely agree. It's a little bit of a shaky sort of subject there. Then there's some I've never, like Bless, I've never even heard of that. Project Gorgon, it's up there. It's free. It's still got a lot of cool stuff. Then going and Terra is down there a little ways. I've been playing that a lot. That's actually right above
Gloria
Request
Victus?
2.
What is Gloria Victus? I think that's the only thing I haven't heard in the top 10. Anybody know?
No
It's
idea.
I believe it's more like
It's a
first-person PvP.
real life. It's a real life feudal type thing. It's a Dark Ages simulator. Is my take of that. It's got some survival aspects. It's you're living in the Dark Ages, and if that's fun for you, you do. It seems like a concept, but I don't want to. I won't be playing that. The number one hyped unreleased game is Star Citizen. I think that, yes, Star Citizen is the number one hyped unreleased game.
They just hit
and
84
I imagine
million.
that it will remain to be in exactly that same spot for a very, very long time. Until it's released and it drops way down. That's my...
Isn't it number 2?
Belief.
Isn't it after Crowfall? It's after Crowfall, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's number 2. I just lost my list, but...
But yeah, it's
Crowfall
right there.
is 4 and Star Citizen's 5. If we're talking
Okay,
about...
so Crowfall jumped ahead because there's plenty of reason to be thinking about Crowfall right now if you believe their time frame.
I want to stop real quick. Something I read about Crowfall, what's his name, Coleman, was kind of a hilarious statement. He basically said, look, if you walk into an environment and you keep getting killed, it's not because the game's unbalanced. It's basically because you suck. Get better. I've never really seen a dev say that. It's like, oh, well, you're right, but no one ever actually says that.
Well, he was also talking
from the
about...
Beta Crush guys.
This was coming from the balance video that was put out recently, and they were saying, yeah, they don't actually mind the idea that one class will totally dominate another. It's not like, every class is even, and it's always just like, rock paper scissors of the same balance of skills and stuff. No, if you're a softie and you take like 1 or 2 seconds for your abilities to wind up, and there's a warrior on top of you, and all their attacks come out in a half a second or less, you're screwed. You're dead. You shouldn't have done that. So that's kind of, I think, what they're talking about is, don't put yourself in stupid situations. If that's not somebody you can beat, get the hell out of there. Call for help. Do something. Don't just like run headlong and then find yourself at the respawn point.
It's really refreshing because
try that the other class is OP.
Yeah.
I mean, it's refreshing, right? WoW sort of changed all that. I mean, EverQuest, you had PvP. They didn't balance the game for PvP. WoW sort of changed that, but I think that became more of like a sports type. I mean, would you agree they kind of had to once they started getting into more of a esports arena picture, battleground picture?
Paladins were broken when I was playing before the first expansion. That's all I'm going to
But
say.
what I'm getting at is I actually like the idea that you don't have classes that are equal. I mean, they shouldn't be. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. You should, if you know enough about the other classes, you should be able to use some advantage that they can't counter, and they should be able to do the same to you.
I think the problem is that you're trying to take a PvE game or a PvE genre and turn it into a PvP game, and that causes problems because the roles were set up to be complementary to each other, not to be balanced.
You know, and that's another thing is if you if we're talking about PvP min-maxing in World of Warcraft, the idea that, oh, I'm going to be a blacksmith, oh, I'm going to be an armor smith, I'm going to be an herbalist, that all goes out the window when you realize, oh shit, I need to be an engineer so I can chuck grenades, mind control, and send fireballs back at people. Because otherwise I'm at a disadvantage because my crafting class doesn't allow me to use these high tier abilities that, you know, just more stuff on my hotbar to kick ass with. So, you know, it was kind of another thing, and I don't know if they've ever addressed it since then, but it was basically you had to have all the grenades, the mind control helmet, all of that stuff. You had to have engineering. So if you were really min-maxing for PvP, you and all of your buddies are chucking grenades and stunning people en masse.
I'm not gonna lie, I was one of those for PvE. I never really PvP'd. What is it called? Elitist Jerks was one of my favorite websites to go to. It worked. I mean, I was top DPS in raids. It worked.
I was turned off with WoW PvP when there became a completely separate gear progression line for PvP that you had to PvP to get the gear. I forget the name of the stat, but it was basically a defensive stat against other player damage that if you didn't have enough of it and somebody did, your PvE gear became worthless. See,
was it defense skill?
I'm killing some awesome dragon that other people aren't killing, and I'm getting a cool piece of gear on that. I want that to directly affect how quickly I can make somebody's head explode. Not, well, that's just a whole different thing. You need to go into the arena and die a billion times to people who have done this more, so you get the gear to be on even. No, I just never tried, but I know people who.
You know what? What that actually makes me think of, though, is the fact that that basically means all of the scrubs that don't have that kick-ass gear are essentially your content, your cheap mobs, your weaklings for the people that are geared up to smash on while they get from point A to point B. You're just content for the tougher players at that point.
Yeah, and I'm like Snipe Hunter just said that games don't necessarily need to be fair and balanced like that. As long as, when we're talking about an MMO, it makes sense in the world that it's in. And there isn't, you don't run into the Jedi problem Ralph Koster talks about from Star Wars Galaxies, that, well, everyone figured out how to be that rare and special and powerful thing that they weren't supposed to do. But back to our list here that we're looking at. We see on here quite a few games that we've talked about periodically. Camelot Unchained is put below Elder Scrolls Online and Gloria Victis and Star Citizen on the hype level. And I think it's just because they're not very talkative. But there was a video put out with Camelot by one of Camelot Unchained's lead developers today, showing what they call Cube is their user building system. They have a builder. It's not a voxel world, but they have a builder that backers can get in and play around. And they showed a video of a castle that was built by a player user and set up for destructibility with the animation by the player user. So it's this castle that like collapses from the inside, and the tower falls down to the side, and the wall is demolished. It was just really, really cool. But the scope of that project, when they're doing everything from scratch and doing everything themselves, but you see that little bit of progress. You see that little bit of progress, and you go, I want to see that next piece of progress. And the faith stays there. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. Did you guys see that video? I could find it real quick. Let me bring up Twitter. Yeah, what do you guys think about Camelot Unchained? I know none of you are real PvP guys.
Well, I like PvP. It just needs to be the right environment for it. Camelot Unchained, I honestly didn't play Dark Age, so I haven't really been following this as the successor to it. Really don't know that much about it, to be perfectly honest.
I mean, I did the alpha every once in a while. The thing that I think would make me come in there, I'm not a PvPer, but one of the things they are adding is like a crafting class, basically, right? A way to participate in the game without actually being within PvP, which is interesting to me. I think that's a smart move. I don't think they even have that in for testing at this point, but
one of the things that led into me wanting to talk about it was they've said that they don't believe in balancing and stuff like that. You know what? There will be some times when, that other class is just going to kick your ass. And you have to be okay with that happens. But in a group, the realm versus realm environment, not everyone is going to be that class. And if everyone were that class, they would lose because they wouldn't have the battle diversity that they needed.
Well, and that expands upon what we're playing. Everyone thinks of, I should be able to individually take on every single... This is an MMO. You're supposed to be playing with other people and within groups be able to take on other people. I know you're going to shake your head at me, Diggs, because you always do. But...
MMO is not a role-playing grouping game.
What I'm saying is you shouldn't be expecting that you can take on every single person. That just is an unrealistic expectation.
It's not about you taking on every single person. It's about being able to survive when somebody attacks you. Right? If somebody starts you into PvP when you didn't want to be in PvP, you should be able to survive. So I shouldn't have to play a warrior because my rogue is going to get attacked by a warrior and I can't stand up to a warrior. If I'm going out and trying to kill everybody else, then yeah, I shouldn't expect my rogue to be able to kill a cleric and blah, 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 blah. Then I won't seek out to fight a cleric. But if the cleric is coming to fight me, then that's a problem.
Then we can add a little...
But if you could escape, you would be okay with that.
Yeah.
Whether you would win...
We can add a special feature.
If you can't win a direct confrontation... You should be able to escape.
We can add a special feature. You're almost dead, and we'll just let you turn into a little bunny rabbit and hop away. So you don't die.
Right, because people are going to be happy with that.
People aren't happy.
You never know. In Project Gorgon, people that die find out what happens when they level up in death.
I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find a game filled with males who are going to be like, oh, I get to run away. That's how I
he was
right?
not being serious.
Somebody comes and challenges me, and I can run away, or I can turn into a bunny rabbit. Males are not going to go for those two.
I would go for that because it's kind of.
I was sort of joking.
You're not a male.
I think also context matters, right? If you're a PvP game versus PvE game, there's a huge difference. But,
RPGs were not set up for PvP, so most players in the RPG are not playing because they want to PvP. They're playing because they want to roleplay.
Yeah, but this is a game.
It's
part of the thing. Part of the thing is that in a game, if there's an OP skill where you can escape combat and live, even if you're well outmatched by turning into a bunny, people are going to want the bunny skill. It's like no one's gonna think, "Oh no, I'm too much of a man for the bunny." Like I'm bunnying out of this. Just like Paladin bubble.
I don't
I'm
think
I love
bubbling.
how you're.
I'm
I love how you're still
bubbling.
talking
You
about my
guys
joke.
dive. I'm gonna bunny out.
We
Right,
can
I'm
make it a
about to
clown.
bunny
I don't
out of
know.
this conversation right now.
How about a
But-
clown?
Yeah, I could do that too.
Who's
But
gonna
what
hit
if
a
I
clown?
What
if I
games
can
on
make
this
the
list?
warrior go mad by turning into a clown, and that fears him, sure, let's go for turning into a clown.
What
The whole
other
point
games
is
on the
ridiculous
list
thought.
surprised you or interest you guys? On this list of these top hyped games, what surprises you? Diggs, what surprises you on this list?
So
where
what I love about this list is how far down World of Warcraft is, considering everybody wants to be a World of Warcraft killer. It's fairly far down on the list. I love that Wizard 101 is a point above World of Warcraft. I love Wizard 101. That's one of my favorite
Well,
games.
we're talking about hype lists here. There's nothing to be
Right.
hyped about with World of Warcraft. Like, is there an expansion going to come out in the next 2 weeks? No. Don't
But
bother.
when was the last expansion? Was that a whole year ago?
I don't think it was that long ago.
10
was
months? I don't know. I don't remember.
it? I don't,
I
We
don't
have
care about
reason
World of
because-
Warcraft. So.
because Morgard is writing for World of Warcraft, we have reason to believe that there will
Maybe
be
that's bumped the
small.
hype.
We have reason to believe there will be at least small pieces of awesomeness hidden somewhere within the game that you could find. That'll be the
Yeah.
when you find a Morgard quest, you have you've won.
And there has to be something about pancake batter, because that is the most common terrible
Oh,
analogy that gets used
no.
amongst us.
No. Okay.
That's only if I'm writing the game.
So the one. The
And I
one
guess
I-
what surprises me
Go ahead.
out of this whole list, I mean, by far the two that if I ever add people who I trust that play these things, the top two they always get mentioned: Guild Wars 2, Final Fantasy, bar none. That's why I was surprised to see Secret World sort of number 2. I'm not sure what to make of that. So that's what surprises me.
I just looked. Arcade is way down there at 6.5. I guess it's not really getting that much love.
And Rift is still rated as the good game that it is. Oh, which is sad for Tryon. That I don't know.
I was also
I shouldn't
surprised
necessarily
by how
feel
far-
bad.
I'm surprised by how far down EVE Online is. I was thinking
Yeah.
that would be quite a bit higher, but
Well, yeah. I was saying earlier, they've got a rabid community that will rip your head off. So, like, I'm surprised the hype train isn't bigger with that, but maybe the EVE players know that they're already content with their game and they don't, like, engage in polls or whatever.
Like the
I
other
guess the
thing
other-
is, people need to be looking for games to be on here. So people that have been playing World of Warcraft for more than 10 years aren't and are happy with that, aren't looking for what the next game is coming out. People that play EVE Online are going to keep playing EVE Online, and they're not going to keep going back to this list. It's up to people like Lock Six Time to make sure that some of these games that he knows are still good get votes to stay on the list. You know that it comes down to that. And that's why I wasn't surprised to see World of Warcraft ranked below EverQuest and Anarchy Online and Age of Conan, or just above. Was a much more successful and in some ways better game than many things that are listed above it, and still is better than a lot of games above it, but it's not conducive to this kind of rating system, because everybody who's voting on these games wants some game to not be World of Warcraft because they're looking for the alternative. There's Warcraft, and then there's other things people are looking for. And this is a list about other things people are looking for.
The other thing that surprises me a little bit is how far Pantheon is there. All things considered, they're actually not that far down the list.
Do they deserve to be hyped up more than Shroud of the Avatar? That was the surprise.
Based off of what we have now, no.
If we stop with what we have now, no, they don't. And they
Well, yeah, but I think that's the team and not necessarily the game, right? So I think it's probably because Shroud of the Avatar, the team isn't as high profile as Pantheon, but the game itself.
So I'm looking at some other things like DayZ is on the list. I didn't even know it was even considered an MMO. I thought it was just like a.
It's an MMO FPS.
Yeah, but like a host your server sort of thing. I didn't realize that people were actually considering it an MMO.
There have been throughout the years hundreds of different posts of people complaining about which games make the list. And what it comes down to is they say, if we want to put a game on the list, we put a game on the list and deal with it. Here's
the other thing, though, that I want to follow up with on that is that H1Z1 is further down the list by a few points, actually. And it seems to me that H1Z1's actually got more buzz around it. Like DayZ, I don't hear hardly anything about.
So I don't know 100% how this works.
Playing DayZ on Twitch than H1Z1 still.
But what I had mentioned, I don't know exactly how this works, but when Saga Lucemia was sort of starting to get a little bit more involved in Twitter, I think they sort of hinted at that they actually have to sort of present themselves to MMORPG.com, like that's how you get on the list. Like, contact us, fill out this information, tell us what your game is, and then they decide. I don't know the details, but that was sort of the gist of what I got, because I had tagged Bill Murphy on a tweet, and he was sort of like, oh, well, and then they sent out an email not long after that. It's just interesting.
It's not an actively curated list. We can tell by looking at the detailed information given about how Star Citizen is releasing this year.
Crowfall PvP? Question mark.
Yeah.
So there was something else. I'm going to kind of move us a little bit different, because I don't think you talked about this last week either. That really kind of bugged me a little bit, and that was actually also related to Landmark. But when they came out and they were basically, because it was at the same time that everyone was banning hackers and botters or whatever. And they come out and they say, if you do this, if you put these two base claims next to each other and purposely do it, we're going to remove all your stuff, basically. And everyone was in such a uproar. And I think at Saga it was you that basically made the point that, like, all right, you test the bug. I was just annoyed by this. I guess that's what I'm talking about. You test the bug. You test it as many ways as you can. Once you sort of characterize it, you don't do it anymore, because your data from that point on, if you continue to use it, is sort of not 100%, right? Because that's an unintended feature that you're building off of. So
if I'm developing a product and I need to see what players are doing in a raw data way, and I need meaningful results to know what needs to be fixed or tuned or changed moving forward, the moment that there's a way to be doing things in an unintended manner, I would need to make a quick decision to say, wait, is that better than intended? If it's better than intended, we can run with it, right? If something's working that we didn't think was possible, and that's really cool. We don't care why it works, we don't care how it works, but we're going to let this work. But if there's an intention for the flow of a game and how it's supposed to work, or any product, even with these Twitch bots that I've put together, if people are doing things outside of what's supposed to be allowed, it's changing all of the data that's being received. There's a good post by the creators of Project Gorgon about the testers abusing the /stuck command. You could do /stuck if you were stuck, and it would like teleport you back. And the people testing the game, which is free for anyone to go in and play, were using it as a fast travel mechanism. So when they were going back in to say, well, where is the terrain broken? What do we need to fix? And trying to put it together, they had no valid information at all to say what was broken. So if you're a tester, or you're playing a game in a test phase, I feel like abusing a bug is worse than if it's in a live phase. That you find the bug, you report the bug. But to get all of your friends together to take advantage of that bug while it still exists, if I'm the developer, I pull the game down and I roll it back and I put the game back up when it's fixed. That's not what Landmark does, though.
Right.
So, do you think they overreacted? I mean, do you think it's right calling it an exploit?
They should take the game down if they're getting bad data that's not helping them, and the majority of their player base is abusing something that is considered a bug. So they don't know right now. They know nothing about what it's actually like to go through their progression system, because everybody found these loot caves and basically killed bad spawn areas, like repeatedly killed and killed. It would be like if people got to max level in another game in 36 hours and they don't know if it's a good new player experience in Landmark or not. I would have rolled it back. I would have said, wait,
it invalidates the entire point of actually having a harvest and actually having exclusivity to outfits and costumes and all of that stuff. If people who are playing right now can accumulate, hundreds of these things that are supposed to be exclusive, and if the game, does become somehow really, really popular really, really fast, be able to wheel and deal them potentially for things that you can only get with station cash. I can definitely see where there's a lot of problems with that, and it was one of those things that I feel like they thought they had it fixed before they did the wipe, and then after the wipe, when it came back, it's like, oh shit. But at the same time, the only the people that are doing it is the a vast majority of their player base. I've seen streamers doing it, I've seen builders doing it, I've seen a ton of and so if they start punishing people, pretty much there go all the Kinos builds, because a lot of those folks were also doing that, or the materials they're getting are coming from people who do that. So it's a difficult sort of, and at the same time, why would you do a wipe if you're still doing more building competitions? That's completely counterintuitive to actually trying to get people to build stuff. I don't want to go out and harvest, even with the new prop system and stuff. I still don't want to go and sit around harvesting for hours and hours and hours.
That's the problem with the existence of the system. What Scott was bringing up is that it's about people were mad when Daybreak said they were going to punish people for abusing a bug that they didn't want to be abused, when they had let people abuse the hell out of bugs and even glorified things that people had done in the...
Okay, but again, you're talking about a company, and that's not a company thing. That's a Smedley thing. Smedley needed the power to say, I said that we were going to do this smackdown, and you still defied me, so I'm going to smack you down. That's a specific Smedley thing, not necessarily...
But that was for H1Z1 more than for Landmark.
Right.
But
and specifically a Smedley H1Z1 thing.
Well, the Smed's attitude towards cheating in H1Z1...
People know what they're doing, though. I mean, the two most hilarious posts I saw, one was, well, what if we didn't know it was not intended? I'm like, come on, all you Landmark people are so entrenched in this game. You know what is intended and what is not. The other was, well, we have to characterize it as best as we can. That's bullshit. If that cave took away your loot, ain't nobody going to be characterizing that bug. They're staying away.
Yeah, well, so the rollback, we know they can't roll back because people are
promised not
for the
to.
company. Well, no, so rollback, as in rolling everything back, that's gonna screw up people's building.
I think inventory is on a separate server. They could probably roll back inventories without affecting what's in the world.
They eventually are going to need to do some kind of wipe again. I would think character wipe, because everybody's got a ton of stuff.
You know what I think was the worst part about this is they didn't actually. They never actually explained why this was a problem, right? So,
I mean,
don't we assume it's a server stability issue, really? Like for some reason there's something.
why it
with,
was a problem for them? What was
yeah,
causing?
why is this bug being punished? They didn't actually say, well, why is this bug being punished? They just said don't do it, right? I mean, did they ever publicly say why not to do it? I don't think so.
Why not
so
do
when
which?
Why'd
they draw the line here when they?
Yeah, because you're telling people. You're telling people, "Oh, use the loot cave. We really don't care. We're not really worried about it. It's been in for weeks and months." And now all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, don't do this."
Actually,
if they would have just said why,
I don't think. And you're right that because that was the first thing I was asking myself. Is not so much why because I want to break the game, so much as just a technical reason. What I'm guessing is if you have two intersecting spaces with the root claims and they're actually overlapping with intersecting attachments. What's going to happen is you're going to have two separate grid spaces, and it's not going to know which one you're actually building on. So either server stability or other potential issues can come from that. Definitely from a technical reason, when I saw that, it's like, I can see why you're not allowing that. But at the same time, you're right. It would really make a lot of sense to explain exactly why, rather than it. I just imagine people in the community who really wanted to use it and didn't care. Were like, "Oh, you're stifling me. I want to be able to build my giant castle across." Whatever. Just build within the requirements. If the game can actually hold more, they'll make it possible. But for right now, just build within the requirements. Build within the specifications.
I got a kick out of it anyway, because just a couple weeks before with the H1Z1, you can apologize on YouTube and prostrate yourself before Smedley to beg to not to be unbanned thing. I put out a troll tweet saying that anyone who had abused a loot cave and landmark was going to be banned, and to see the precedent for petitions or for removing it,
good.
right? And it created this like huge uproar of people like actively saying they're unfollowing me for being terrible or whatever. But
didn't Domino say you should be ashamed of yourself?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, somebody did. Yeah. And then she realized, because I had a private conversation with her later, that she realized what I was doing, because she was completely unaware of what was going on with H1Z1 and Smedley and all of that, and it was funny. But like people in chat here and people then were saying, well, the loot cave is different to hacking. Well, in the TOS agreement, they're in the same section. They're just different lettered things.
I mean, it's an exploit.
It's a terms of service breach.
But I mean, do we even need to go to terms of service and just talk about, fair play and all the stuff that we're talking about? We learned this as kids playing freeze tag or whatever, right? Like, don't cheat. I mean, right? And so when you go up and you see, because this is what happened to me in the last loot cave. I went up, there were wisps. I killed the wisp, another one popped up. I killed the wisp, another one popped up. And it took me a good 10 or 15 tries to be like, what is this? And is this supposed to be like this? And then finally you're like, I don't think this is supposed to be like this, because it's just continuously spawning, so I'll stop doing that. Like, it might take you a little while to figure out, wow, that probably is a bug.
And 10 wisps, whacking 10 wisps, you're not the problem.
Well, I'm just saying, they kept spawning in exactly the same spot.
Out the bug and bringing all your friends to be doing it together. That's what was happening.
I mean, and the original loot cave, fine, we did that. But after the wipe, come on.
You know how nutty, I mentioned this in our Skype chat, or no, I was on Twitter. People were so involved in this idea of putting two base. They started doing freaking math on the forums. It's like, what? Here's my calculations of This is not a game, people. You should not have to be doing calculations on a napkin. That's not a game. That's like you're learning, you're teaching, that's like a school setting. I'm sorry.
I do math for some games sometimes.
I've played games where I've had spreadsheets and various other things that I've put together to really get a deep understanding of what was going on, so that I made the decision that I wanted to make, understanding all of the consequences.
They were drawing and comparing diagrams. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It was just like, really, this is what this game means. I'm not touching this thing if that's what I have to do. Or I'm going to pay you to do it for me.
Well, you don't have to do anything yourself. Anyway, in Landmark, right? Everything can be given to you.
We have everything, so yeah. One way or another, either the game gives it all to you, or somebody's gotten everything from the loot cave and can give it to you. So.
Hey guys, I need.
Oh, come on! I ran with you.
I need top tier equipment. Somebody hook me up.
We spent hours in that cave. We can't act like we didn't use it. I was with you.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I have everything.
I personally spent hours with you in that cave.
Yeah.
I haven't caved after the
stuff
wipe.
to give to people.
To be perfectly honest, after the wipe, it's like, whatever. I figure it's, kind of cheating to do it at this point. And
You
it
still
turns
get
out
to-
it is.
I don't see any value to me logging in, because I loved the testing. Like, I loved alpha. I loved looking for any bug that I could find and really beating the crap out of any system there was. If I had a testing goal, if I were on like their unstable server, not their workshop server, really trying to find actively testing and stuff like that, I would probably be playing Landmark right now. Or no, maybe something else, maybe not. I could be testing repopulation, but I'm not.
So here's a question for you guys. Now that we have experienced the open development of Landmark, how closed do you think next should be? Should we be like like it was in the 90s and early 2000, a friends and family alpha, very private closed beta?
It
What do you
starts
think?
to ruin the experience of what EverQuest Next is if we're able to start learning about it before it's actually ready and start, solving some of the puzzles and learning some of the major quest lines and what makes certain characters tick and all of that stuff. And it's one of those things where it loses the magic if the first time we get to play it is, still seeing all the girders and all of the scaffolding up rather than the nice, tidy, clean version of it. It's not day one of EverQuest Next and going forward. That was magical because the game was ready. It was done, or done enough to release. Do that with EverQuest Next, and I don't think it's going to have the same sort of thing. They need day one to be really, really, really good, because as long as it's taken to come out, anything that they do to upset that will potentially, further hurt their potential customer base.
It's supposed to be fairly closed. They said a while ago, I think it was last October, the marketing person said that EQ Next is not planned to be as open as H1Z1 or Landmark. And we don't know if that's changed, since the takeover.
How much of that is? How much do you think of that is because they don't know if the tech will work?
I don't know. The newest,
I think they don't. I think it's exactly what Neuro was saying, is that they don't want us to be jaded on the experience from playing the races and understanding the storyline. And if we do get in late closed beta, I would love for that to be on Kunark, and then we leave for Kunark and go start the game at Kinos. That's what I would hope if we get in early, so that we don't.
You get to test the noob area, and then the rest of the world is unveiled at launch. But I agree that we were told a while ago that EverQuest Next was not going to be as early and as open of access. But then when Velix interviewed Smedley, whether Smedley is reliable or not, I will leave up to every individual to decide for themselves. He said they love early access and they love open development and transparency. And not only have they had such a great time doing it, but they want to do it even more. I think it reminds me of, what's that movie slash book, Patriot Games, where Harrison Ford's Jack Ryan tells the president when they ask him if he's someone's friend who he's unsure if he wants to be associated with, he says, "No, we're lifelong friends." It's like, well, because we don't really want to talk about this, we're going to say we love it so much that you don't know where to go with this next question. But the last word that we heard was from the guy at the top of the company, this is our way. This is our thing. We're going to take this further and further and further. I hope they don't for EverQuest Next, but I can't trust that it won't happen.
I don't listen to Smedley.
I
don't think he knows what he's talking about.
That's he definitely, well, he says things. He says things and wants them to be done, and whether it's the right thing or whether they get done or whether it was even planned for to begin with, it's hard to tell sometimes. He's a man who just does not give a fuck. So we have one question. We're getting kind of close to the end here. This is from Jane Signal. This is a more intelligently worded version of the same question that we've seen in the past. What constitutes an MMO? How many players on your server can fully interact with at one time? What is the number that makes a massively multiplayer online game? And you know what? It's up to their marketing department, unfortunately. That's one of those things. There is no MMO enforcement department. It's a subjective thing, and if someone wants to call their product an MMO, it's not one of those things where you can say no so much as, maybe I think you're wrong and I'm not going to call your game an MMO, but you're going to call your game an MMO. Sog walked away. He just wants no part of this. So either of you guys want to touch this one at all, or have we all kind of come to the agreement that it is just subjective at this point? It's just a label.
I'll let Phantom answer first.
Okay.
Why? So you can argue with me?
Yeah.
I mean, the term itself at this point, I don't think it has a whole lot of meaning. Just to be blunt. I mean, for me, an MMORPG, it has to be a persistent world. It has to be role-playing. It has to be built into the system, not a second thought. As far as number of players, I think you can put a number. I mean, if I was just to think of, I would say 1,000, I guess, off the top of my head. Somehow in a shared world, that's the important part. Maybe to me, that's the important part. Not necessarily the actual number, just that it's in a shared space that is persistent.
For me, it also has to be a non-instance environment in that, you don't walk into it, all of the doors are closed, all the walls are sealed up and everything, and by the end of it, all the doors have been open, all the walls have been blasted out, all the resources have been taken, and then it resets the next time you come to it, rather than if it was more of a persistent MMO, things would at least have to respawn gradually over time. You wouldn't just end that battle and then all of a sudden go into that exact same battle again in that exact same space with those exact same properties, or same with areas with creatures. I think of Guild Wars 1. It was great that they had the thing where you could go from point A to point B and you had the town hubs, but at the same time you only had 4 people in your group at a time, and the town hubs were really the only MMO aspect of it. which unfortunately, like, Nexon's relied on heavily. I think of Diablo. They didn't call Diablo 1 an MMO, but by today's standards, someone could call it an MMO. Even though Battle.net was just a glorified chat room and a way to find games, it wasn't, you know, an interactive gameplay space.
When I'm thinking of numbers for MMO, what constitutes an MMO, I mean, the term was kind of coined as a way to differentiate it from co-op RPGs, and those were fairly small.
Like Baldur's
so
Gate?
I'd say even 100 could classify as an MMO in terms of numbers, because it's much more than you could do with co-op, which is what that was intended to rival. Yeah, I mean, what constitutes an MMO just has to be massively multiplayer online, and maybe that massively portion could be as low as 100. 127 is actually a good number. That's close enough to 100 that I'd go with that, Phantom. You know, these days we've got all kinds of subgenres of MMO, from survival and first-person shooter, third-person shooter, all kinds of stuff. So we've got some subgenres going on there. Persistent world is important to me if it's an MMORPG, though.
So something like a multiplayer evolving online world is...
Who would have said that before?
Meow.
Now, for me, the real key should be that you have to be online, and online in a you don't get to choose who's with you environment. So not a private server I'm going to dial into my friend's private server to play. Like, Ark doesn't count. It should be a multiplayer online experience that requires you to go online and find out what's already there for you. And if there are restarting environments, you know, it doesn't necessarily need to be persistent for me. I don't mind if they're rolling episodes that you just kind of hop into whatever's there. I don't even mind if it's an arena type game or like a MOBA, but the fact that you are arriving into some sort of virtual game space, even if the majority of that, even if the most linked area of that is a lobby or a chat room, I don't necessarily mind. But what makes it an MMO instead of, you know, a co-op game is you're logging into something that exists larger than you out there somewhere in the cloud instead of private hosting. I think that's the big key. And I don't mind if when you're actually playing the game, there are only 10 people in the physical game environment, as long as when you're in the lobby area, there are thousands of other people interacting about the game. Even I could be okay with that. I could be happy calling any MOBA an MMO now that I think about it in those terms, because you can still be engaged. You're still engaged in the experience even if you're not playing in that match. It's like being in the stands.
Well,
It doesn't have to. I'm not saying an MMORPG. I'm not saying an open world game. I'm saying a massively multiplayer online game. I think I can accept that as a definition. But what I can't accept is small private server, loosely or not linked.
That was funny, Tsog. You know me too well. You knew exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, it wasn't about you. We just
No,
probably
no, no. I was just about to say MMORPG. I don't know if it's an MMORPG, and just as I was about to say that, you were like, "I'm not saying it's an RPG." So you know what I was about to.
Do we have any more questions?
No, I think
And
that's about
the
it.
list talk didn't give us too much to talk about because most of these games aren't even available to play, and a lot of them we don't want to play anymore. Landmark is just... We needed to talk about that, didn't we? we had to go there.
I wasn't going to let us not go there. That's been bugging me since 2 weeks ago or whenever it was
Right.
talked about. So, I guess, are we basically at our end?
We've got
Yep.
20...
I mean, we could keep
Now we're
talking.
done.
Probably.
Yeah. Okay, we can be done. I'm okay with that. I don't have anywhere to go.
I guess the one other thing that I meant to say earlier, but I think we kind of moved on from the subject before I said, was the idea of keeping people in the starting zone until the game goes live, and then having the rest of the content available. I remember hearing that was one of the tragic things that happened with Age of Conan, is that people could only play the starting zone, and the starting zone was super polished and really well done, and as soon as they got out of that, the rest of the stuff was like rough and untested, not as well developed, and it just all went to crap. And I would definitely hope that any game that wants to try to do that model recognizes the extreme hazard that can happen to developing into the space of where people are at rather than where they're going to go.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
that's
that was
what I say all the time. Thank you for making it so that I didn't have to say it this time.
That's a Swipe at Revival staged release, starting off with Crown's Rock and then opening up the rest of the world later.
No, actually, I think what they're doing is a really cool thing because they're iteratively adding each feature. It's not like, one house and a nearby stream and a nearby cave and, a nearby forest. It's only houses, all of the houses, but only houses. And then all of this area, but, only this area, knowing that there's going to be, a lot more beyond it that's going to have a lot more to it. And when they're finally ready to open up the area outside of that, they'll have already been able to gauge all of the interaction with the players up to that point. Potentially even do something where they kind of have let some people out like a trickle at a time rather than just opening the doors and everybody goes. So you actually have to earn your way to leave the city or whatever and go to the outside area, so they can kind of pace themselves in terms of making sure the content's all there.
My only question that is, what will the testing be like? Like, I'm fairly up to date with Revival and that staged release system, and I like the idea. But then, is there a separate testing environment for what's about to come? Like, in games that have expansions, there are people testing the expansion content before. Does it feel... Will there be a stable server all the time? Like, you could play in the stable housing environment or the unstable housing plus next release environment. So that kind of... And that's my only concern about it. How... When the game still isn't fully released, will you get the option of vertical slice of what's done or rough testing area? And how does that all blend together? And when does rough... It's like when the next Linux release comes out, like that everything gets deprecated and you have to update everything.
Ophonic is asking if you're talking about private test server.
Well, that's the idea. That's how a lot of current games do it. They having a a test server for
Yeah,
upcoming content.
we haven't heard anything like that. But he says it's very likely. Though they haven't decided if it's going to be open to players or not. Well, if they're hiring storytellers, then maybe it's the storytellers that will know. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I like about the way Revival is going is that I don't even know if it's really a newbie city. I mean, it's this city that we start in, but you don't necessarily out-level that city, so you don't necessarily have to leave at any point. And that could be an interesting thing for, I mean, EverQuest Next too. If you could have cities that you don't out-level. I mean...
Yeah, and it's just an interesting. But when you talk about a whole new way of releasing a game in this modular way, it changes. One change to the structure changes so many of the other parts, and then how it all falls back in.
To be honest, it makes me wish that the DBG team would take a look at that kind of approach for EverQuest Next and give us a modular approach.
Well, maybe that's
regardless
what they
of
think
whether we
Landmark is. Maybe that's.
I meant within
I was not serious there.
Within the EverQuest Next world, yeah.
Cool. Well, seems like we finished talking about stuff here. Unless you guys had anything else, probably a good time to wrap up here.
That's fine. We have Revival Cast. Your Crowfall CNC kind of died, Sog.
Yeah, we couldn't have it. We
didn't have any European
two
people.
regular hosts. Not able. I couldn't get backups, and there's also not enough to talk about for some of these games coming up. But the way you guys are doing that Revival show, I will be home by 4 to turn it on for you.
Right. So that's this Sunday, 1 p.m. Pacific and 4 Eastern. Cool.
Cool deal. All right, and that's that. Who do we have on next? Is that
V-Next?
V-Next. That's going to be who we're going to have on next week. And I won't be there. I'm going to be at some, let's just call it post E3 shenanigans. And yeah. So, thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate it. And we will see you all next week.